Possibility to get all the information that's available to us projected outward shows a decrease across the board in the state. So I understand the use of these numbers is not unreasonable.
But our numbers are actually going up over the next 4 years in total, both at the middle school and the high school.
Well, that's a projection.
Right, but that's, I'm presuming that's a big
It's a projection based on, on our current numbers.
Yeah,
Yeah, but when we get official reports
yeah.
every month, no matter when it is, this month it's down to 1158. What did we start at? 1165.
But if you look at Danbury, from last year
Yeah,
to this
there are
year,
exceptions, but
every
it's still
number goes-
1158.
every number goes up. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're growing them in our gardens out there.
Any other comments? Questions? Okay, next we have ratification of the Yukon Area Teacher Association agreement between the school board and the teacher association. I need some guidance here on how to bring this forward.
So you can just make a motion to ratify the teacher's contract as negotiated with the teachers
All right.
for the next 2 years.
I wasn't sure if we were supposed to go into any detail yet, so. All right, I make a motion that we ratify the agreement that we reached with the Newfound Area Teacher Association for the next 2 years.
Exactly.
Okay? And that was moved by me, seconded by Vincent Paul. Any questions or comments?
We've been made aware that the teachers have ratified the agreement from their perspective. So once we ratify the agreement, it will be official.
Yes. Yes?
Yes, I'd just like to say I think this is a fair representation of give and take on both sides, and that it's something that's long overdue. And I hope that the voters will take a real hard look at it, and in exchange for what we'll be able to budget differently this year, that they will see that it's time to put this contract in place.
I'd like to follow along with that to encourage every community member to support the contract that we've negotiated and talk it up among their friends. And see if we can't get these teachers a contract passed.
I'd just like to add that it's really nice when you both leave the table happy. And it doesn't always happen, so that was wonderful.
And they did make concessions on the health insurance this negotiation, where they didn't last year. So that's back to where we both felt good about the negotiation.
And the authorization. Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, I'm going to take a roll call vote on this. So, Alexandria.
Yes.
Bridgewater.
Yes.
Bristol.
Yes.
Danbury, yes. Groton.
Yes.
Hebron.
Yes.
New Hampton.
Absolutely.
Great. So, it is now been ratified. Okay, now we have review of the Danbury Elementary School resolution to K/1 enrollment. Quite a mouthful.
Yeah. We need to word it the right way.
Yeah, I just want to say about the teacher's contract, I think the trick was in not agreeing to a mediation date.
And I guess I would add, it's a little beyond, but that the board is planning to meet with the teachers union on Monday to put together a public relations plan and to get information out to the public. So that will be forthcoming as to what that looks like, and probably joint press release and information will be coming on the actual, what the agreement is, so the public is aware of that.
Yep. So more details to follow.
Okay,
Tracy.
so Danbury Elementary School, and I will ask Ann, who's back there, to jump in whenever. But, so Danbury Elementary School has had quite a unique situation this year, given that we have lost students everywhere. Danbury continues to grow. And so when we started the school year, at the end of last year, when we were looking at classes and which combinations, because Danbury has 2 classes, 2 grades that are combo classes. The K1 classroom was projected at 18 students, and so thinking that, you know, you might get one more, so we decided to go with that combination of classroom, K to 1. And then at the start of the school year, over the summertime, that class gained 6 students. And at the beginning of the year, once school started, we gained 2 more students. So we landed ourselves with a class size of 26, which was a pretty significant concern. It is a bigger class than we normally have in the district, as well as the fact that it was a combination classroom of K to 1, which makes it instructionally even more difficult. So Ann and I met, we've had dialogue kind of over the summer as the number started to grow. We had dialogue at the beginning of the year as they continued to increase, looking at alternatives and options. And so, you know, initially one of the things we did was we offered parents the option to go to Bristol Elementary School because their numbers were lower. But of course, parents want to go to their home community. They don't, you know, they wanted to stay there. So we didn't have a lot of people looking at that. We looked at configuring different classes. So instead of having K to 1, should we change it, have a kindergarten classroom and a first grade classroom and combine maybe 2 or 3, or 1 and 2. But again, when you're breaking up a class and then recombining a class, it isn't always the most effective because now the teacher instructionally has to figure out how to work with 2 or basically reconstructing the school. We did add additional resources to that class. I know Ann worked diligently. Danbury doesn't have a lot of staff, so she did a nice job pulling people where she could to say, okay, support this group, support that group. And that worked for a while until I think we had the last 2 kids, and I think the poor teacher was ready to go over the edge. So we met, problem solved, brainstormed some ideas. And our proposal obviously is written out here, but, and again, I think this is the best of the worst in the situation that I don't know that we anticipated this problem to happen. It is unique. And so we tried to solve the problem in the best way for students as well as the best way financially for the district. And so we are recommending that we take the kindergarten and the first combination classroom and separate them out. So that's the first step, is to have a kindergarten classroom of 18 and a first grade classroom of 8.
I think it's 17.
17.
9. 17 and 9.
17 and 9. And so breaking them out. We currently have, so then the next question was, well, how do we do this? Was we currently have 2 kindergarten teachers that are assigned full-time positions, but are currently only teaching 2 half-day. They're only teaching 1 section of kindergarten at this point in time. One's in New Hampton and one's in Bridgewater, and that's due to enrollment. So New Hampton currently, we thought about the New Hampton position mainly because Ann covers both buildings. For transition purposes, it made most sense to do that. Having 1 supervisor, having 1 transition person to work out the details with me and the teachers to make that happen. So it's our proposal to take the part-time kindergarten teacher that's in New Hampton and move her to Danbury. We again had conversations around kindergarten or first grade. We determined to put her in first grade because the numbers were lower. It was more aligned to the grade she was in. And the kindergarten class currently is a pretty tough class. And so we determined we would keep the K1 teacher who's in Danbury in the kindergarten class and put her in the first grade classroom. We would then request to hire a part-time kindergarten teacher for New Hampton. We know this isn't the best. It's not unusual though. We have teachers who go out for medical leave, for pregnancy leave. We have teachers who go out for leave and we have to put in a substitute teacher. This would be somebody who we would hire for the remainder of this year. In the proposal, I talked about transition time for moving of the classrooms, for teachers to pay them for extra hours to work on the curriculum, to make sure they're up to speed, the transition smooth. We talked about having parent nights. So that, at this point, is our proposal moving forward.
I'll go first. I have a lot of concerns with the proposal. It seems like it's pretty convoluted to me, and I have several questions. We have two kindergarten teachers who only teach half day, so why don't we have all day kindergarten at those schools?
Because the board has that offer in kindergarten.
Okay.
When you see my budget presentation, you might see.
Right, I know that's next year though, but I mean, if they're there anyway, and I'm sorry, I know that they're doing tutoring, and I know that that is valuable, but these low numbers at these other schools are because they don't have all day kindergarten. And so unless you have money to stay home or something like that, you can't drive to pick up your kid at 10:30 in the morning from where you work, and then, unless your lunch is every day taken at that time. And so I'd rather have us leave the kindergarten teacher where she is and hire somebody for the rest of the year for first grade.
That's the pleasure of the board, honestly. The teacher would be very happy with that.
And
but
I really would like to talk
would be
about
the-
letting those two kindergartens be full
The
day.
teacher would be very happy with that.
And
but
I really would like to talk
would be
about
the-
letting those two kindergartens be full day for the rest of the year. I mean, maybe not right away, set up a time for that, but it just feels like two sets of children are being disrupted. In the first group, they don't have any choice. It's too many kids in one room. But the second group doesn't need to be also.
I'm going to piggyback on what Ruby said, and you say you're trying to make a decision what's best for the students, but I don't agree with that, because I don't think it is based on the students. I think right now it's based on the convenience of, yes, I see that there is a definite need in Danbury to try to fix this, because I can't imagine having those numbers in a K-1 class. Absolutely agree with that. But when you have 5-year-olds already based in the situation, already have learned the routine, and I've gone back and forth on this so many times, because I've been moved in my position probably 4 times, I think. But I've heard a lot from my town family members, and I heard a lot about going full day a few months ago, but I didn't push that. But I think now is the time that we really need to discuss a full day kindergarten and the benefits of that. And keeping those people where they need to be with those students. They've already started with that, and so I want to think about the students first.
And again, I said this was a proposal. The board can choose. I mean, my role is to look at it from all angles, including the kids, the financial piece. And so I would be remiss if I didn't say here is the option that covers both. I mean, to me, this is a fix.
You've done an excellent job at trying to make a fix and solve that problem, absolutely, but.
And I will add that I have had lots of calls around all-day kindergarten. The issue is our numbers are, so like, for example, in Bridgewater, we're at 18. It's hard to make that decision, because if you go full day, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it when I do my budget presentation on some of the things that have come up since that point in time. I mean, the question is, if you went full day kindergarten, you're going to have some full day and some not full day. Do you want to keep that consistent? Do you not want to keep that consistent? So I think there's a lot that has to go into it. We also need to look at busing. We need to look at lunches. I mean, there's a lot that goes into those decisions before you make that, in the sense of we would need to make sure the kitchens could handle, lunch periods could handle additional students. I mean, there's a lot. What do the bus loads look like in the afternoon? Can they?
Do they actually have lunch periods at New Hampton and Bridgewater, or do they have a lunch?
We have 2 lunches in New Hampton, so we have a primary lunch and then an intermediate lunch.
And in Bridgewater? Same thing?
Yeah, we have 2.
Stacy, my understanding is that the kindergarten at Danbury would remain all day.
Correct, and the reason we had a lengthy conversation is just because those kids are there all day right now. One of the options we talked about was breaking it into 2 half-day programs. But again, because they're currently there all day, it was a challenge. I know we would have to make it very clear it was for 1 year, that this was not a full-day program unless the board determines that's the direction you want to go in. But again, it was, because again, the schedule has been set that way.
Well, we don't require kindergarten, right? We offer it and don't require it.
We have to offer it, but it's not required to attend.
And we don't provide busing for them, correct?
We provide AM first thing in the morning or PM late in the day,
Okay,
no
so
midday.
one-way
yes,
busing.
answer that.
So, well, not exactly.
We don't provide
Yes,
midday.
sort of is the answer to that. So, again, I don't think that we should be making a decision in order to make this convenient, but we shouldn't be making this so inconvenient that people aren't enrolling with us, because where they start kindergarten, if they go to work with mom or dad, they might continue because they're already somewhere else, and I just think that happens a lot more than we realize. Or they don't go, and then we've got kids showing up who, even though because we don't require it, so they couldn't show up on the first day of first grade having no education prior to it. So I really think if we're paying 2 kindergarten teachers part-time, then we should pay them, if we're paying them full-time to teach part-time, we should pay them full-time to teach full-time. As long as space allows it, I don't know, but that puts 3 of our schools then at full-time kindergarten for this year. It's not completely consistent, but it's better. It's better. Sue?
Well, I think that we should leave the New Hampton teacher where she is for consistency for the children. And I think they probably keep her busy that other half day. I think we should hire a new first grade teacher for the ES. But I don't think we should change to a full day kindergarten at the places who have half day now, because full day is not for everyone. These children have enrolled in a half day kindergarten. But I think we should look at the options for next year. Full day kindergarten is not for every child and for every family.
I have a question, and I believe that we just, this is, I hope not out of line, I guess, letters went out. There was the concern over how much of our student population is close away from their home school a couple months back. That discussion was had, and I believe that was worked on. And so I guess my question is this a function of that, or did we deal with that? Whether you look at it as an issue or not is a matter of opinion, but did we deal with that concern? And if we didn't, is this a function of that?
It is not, because these were all kids who moved into Danbury. So we did deal with it in the sense of, so we had, for example, we had several requests for kindergarten and first grade in Bridgewater. And we denied several of them because it would have put us into needing 2 first grade classrooms. Because I can't remember, but I think they're at 17 first grade. Is that 17 or 18? And I think there were like 4 requests, which would have potentially at the beginning of the summer, if we had 1 or 2 students requiring us to have 2 classes in first grade. So that's what I had tried to avoid, was any movement that created us to have more teachers than we needed because kids from other towns were in that other school. But these were literally kids who moved in over the summer or the beginning of the school year that lived in Danbury.
So I'm gonna make a motion. Hold on, I'm now making a motion. Yeah, we can discuss it after, but we're talking about 2 things so it's compound. So I'm gonna make a motion on the first part, which is that we hire a first grade teacher for the remainder of the year for Danbury.
Second?
We'll go with Sue. She was louder. Oh, no, that's okay.
I'm close. Sue was louder.
Okay, Vincent Paul, comments?
He's got a question for Stacy relative to how the following thought would impact the curriculum coordinator's responsibility and end result. I hear a need to address full-day kindergarten in the district. It doesn't necessarily have to be done at each individual elementary school. And if that were the case, since we have lots and lots of space, what if we were to do that in a centralized location? Does it have impact on the curriculum?
It does, because one is, I mean, you certainly can get more education into a student being there a full day than a half day. So like right now, for example, one of our concerns with half days, so kids are basically getting in kindergarten half an hour of math. That is just not enough time having that. So it does impact. It allows us to have kids here. I would love to see full day kindergarten. It allows us to have kids here all day. I think the issue with centralizing it and saying, okay, so we're gonna have full day kindergarten at this school is we're gonna get overrun. You're just gonna have so many parents wanting that. I think you create a lot of number concerns in the sense of, so does everybody then want to go to that school where it's full day? And how do you maintain that? How do you make those decisions about who should be there and who should, like who, let me give you an example. Bridgewater is at 17 or 18 in their kindergarten class. So if we had gotten a few more students, we would have had two sections. Because their numbers have been consistently high, you'll see I'm not recommending we cut that position of part-time yet because it does concern me. We don't know what that enrollment continues to be. If it's at 19 or 20, do you separate those out into two smaller classes for kindergarten? So I think it's a challenge to look at it in buildings, because then I think you will get a ton of requests for parents to enroll their student at that building.
I want to add that I used to be against all-day kindergarten. I thought we were taking kids out of the playroom before they should be. But I've thought about this a lot because I went to first grade when I was 5. Then they changed their mind and said you couldn't go when you were 5 because you were too young, and you had to wait until 6. Then they added kindergarten. Now they go when they're 5. Well, we all made it all day. So all they did was add a 13th year and flip back to what they used to do. So it's hard, I know, for some. They're tired. Adding a bus ride to it would exhaust them. So I don't think that's how we should go, but it looks like at 3 schools we could offer this now. And then make it part of our master plan if that's the direction we want to go in.
Well, and that's kind of where I was going with it. If it can be worked out, I mean, it would seem to me that if it were centralized, at a location that you could centralize it at, I don't know where that would be, but if you were able to do that, then you alleviate space at the other schools and can much more easily implement a 1 through 6 environment. And I want to know academically if it's going to be, I mean, it has to have a positive effect because you're doubling education.
But I will tell you that full-day kindergarten has no negative effect. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know that there's any negative effect to full-day kindergarten.
And based on the demographics of our district, it's obviously something that would be of great interest. So, kind of a trade-off whereby the K through 6 mandate in a couple of years might be easier to do based on trending downward population, but to facilitate that, perhaps in a subsequent year, if you were to look at that in a manner that would be appropriate, that would not exhaust the children because of bus rides, because I'm very sensitive to that distance-wise, particularly out in Danbury.
Well, we're actually, if you go to North Groton, or you go to like Straits Road in New Hampton, we're talking about the same problem.
But there's got to be some sort of trade-off because space is the limitation. So I would encourage some creativity there on the mandate. Those are my comments.
What's the additional cost of hiring a first grade teacher for Danbury?
So it would be, depending on who we found, so the salary plus benefits, I would say $70,000. I will add it, as I said in here, is we have a Bridgewater position that we did not fill this year because of the first grade. We didn't need 2 of them, so we do have that position in the budget, which is, I talked about in the proposal.
Yeah. Jeff?
If we hire a full-time teacher for Danbury first grade, it resolves this issue, correct?
If you've hired a full-time teacher for Danbury, absolutely.
I'd like to move a motion.
Okay,
and stop discussing full-day kindergarten at this
I have a
point.
procedural question.
okay, procedural question,
Well,
sorry.
because I think, this happens pretty much every meeting where there's something that comes up that we have a meeting, format that says we're gonna do these things, we're gonna discuss these items, and we're gonna discuss these items, and then we're gonna move consent agenda items, and then we're gonna have a period of public comment or however.
Yep.
But A, if we move the question right now, we have not opened up the opportunity for public comment
Yep.
on this. And B, we once again found that one thing in tonight's meeting that we're gonna kind of do different.
Okay,
And I understand there may be reasons for that, I just,
no, you're right, we should move this to individual items, yes.
Well, let me throw my whole point here is, this agenda item is to talk about a problem in Danbury. And your motion proposed a solution to that problem.
Yep.
And then we went off, started talking about full-day kindergarten throughout the district, which is absolutely nowhere in our agenda. And if we're gonna talk about that, A, it's not the time to talk about it now, and B, it needs to be publicly posted.
Okay, so let's move my motion to individual agenda items, and let's add for next month's agenda, discussion of full-day kindergarten. Sound good?
Yeah, wait,
Yep, go ahead.
are you cutting off discussion on your motion then?
No, you want to say something else? Yep.
Your additional costs in your proposal, you show that you would give the current teacher in Danbury 8 hours to develop curriculum. Doesn't she already have curriculum for?
Right, but that would be just realigning to only kindergarten. So it would give her, I wanted to be fair to the teachers, if we were gonna go with this model, was to give them time to do the planning and set that up. I mean, there is some separation of now, I'm teaching kindergarten, first grade with melded work, what do I need to separate out, what do I need to do? So I was trying to be responsible to the teachers as well, to give them time to plan and prepare for this. But I would add, if you are gonna go with a full-time position, which is fine, I have no problem with that, solves a lot of problems, that would be great. You likely don't need any of that. You might need some custodial support to help move some furniture from one classroom to another. That would be it. Because we would hire a teacher with the expectation they would be coming in.
And that was gonna be my next
Yeah.
question about the custodians.
Yeah.
So that's their additional hours. is to
Yeah, so
rearrange
they would
the
likely be
classrooms.
able to do this maybe a couple hours, after school, just to physically move and create the first grade classroom. Just help them move out.
This teacher also teaches 5th grade math. So she teaches right now kindergarten, 1st grade, and 5th grade math. So she's got a complicated schedule.
Yeah, they all do over there.
We're rethinking a few things.
If I'm comment, for me, based on this being this early in the year, based on how much money we always end up with at the end of the year, we got plenty of dough for this.
I was gonna say, what else should we spend on besides this? Okay, so that's gonna go to the individual agenda items.
And one thing too, maybe she doesn't need 8 hours, but I think that the teacher that is teaching KN1 will need a little bit of time to adjust her curriculum.
Yeah, and I will work with them.
Figure out how to use
Yeah,
them.
so
Not opposed
if
to
I have some
that.
flexibility on that, I'll work with them and figure that out.
Okay, so that's been moved. And next we have the budget presentation, the big screen.
So are we gonna vote on that?
Under individual agenda
Oh,
items after public comment. So right now, budget presentation is list. Do we need a final budget number? Yes, we need.
Yeah, why don't you do that, then I can set up.
We have to ask this.
Yeah, I can.
It's working.
and at least one person says yes. Let's look up this one.
Okay, so in front of you all, we prepared for you. We tried to take a different approach. You have a little budget book. And I just want to go through what's in it so you have an understanding of what we did. So on the left is the presentation, so you have that, you can take notes on. Enrollment reports is at the top, just so you have those current numbers. And you'll have a pull-out sheet that has all the account structure on it, so that if you need help or understanding the accounts, we did a nice little hand, actually this was from the budget presentation. with the budget committee, so you have a handy dandy outline of all the chart of accounts, so you can know what is actually in those. Under introduction budget summary is the 1,000-foot budget. That's the big view, one page, here's all the big accounts that we have. Then you'll see the next one is the building level budget. So what we did was we broke down each budget by each building. So you'll see a Bristol Elementary School, a high school, a middle school, Danbury budget. You can tell those by the numbers at the beginning. If you look at your reference sheet, you can see that. What you'll see on there is fiscal 13 and 14 were the actual expenditures. 15 is the adopted budget that we have for this year. And then actually you'll see then a column of full-time equivalents. That's how many full-time equivalent positions we have in that category. And then you'll see the FY16 proposed budget. I'm under the section called under school building budgets.
What part is that?
I'm just on the first page. So it should be the third tab in. So I just want to go through type 7. And then what we did was we broke out special ed, central office, okay, which also includes transportation, facilities, and technology, summer school, after school, and then what you'll have is there's a big budget, and it's called Part 6, non-wasteful budget, detail with notes. This is the detail budget that has notes in it. So if you go through, say, Bristol Elementary School's budget and go, oh, look, the supply line went up by $1,000, you can then go into this budget, find that line, and it should tell you what is in that budget that went up. So what are they looking to buy within that budget? Section 7 is, we broke out just wages and salaries, so you can see what that looks like across time.
And is that the contract presumed?
No.
No.
And I'll talk,
Okay.
and I'll talk about all, I'll talk about 8 increases we put in there.
Okay.
And then the last section is actually 2 pieces. One is a rationale for all of any changes in the positions. So you'll see those, and I paperclip them so you could kind of identify the 2 sections. So those are all the changes, either additions, subtractions, or changes that we made within this budget. And then the last section is what our budgeted positions are. So you can see actually who's in those positions and what their equivalents are, where they're housed, and what their jobs are. So we're trying to be as comprehensive as we can.
Have you presented this to various groups?
This budget, for you,
No, this.
you're the first.
Oh, I was wondering what the feedback was, because it looks like it'd be positive.
Okay, we tried to make it, taking your feedback on like what works or what doesn't work, we were like, oh, breaking it out by school can help you make a comparison just for an individual building, but you could also look and say, okay, if Bristol Elementary School is looking at supplies on this, what does New Hampton spend on supplies? So you can actually do that comparison. So we tried to break it down into ways that made sense for you guys to look at it.
Nice job, Madam Superintendent.
I think
And
this is
Mike
kind of
also helped out.
this is the budget that both of us are used to providing even further in further detail. I don't really know why you didn't get this in the past, 'cause it's very.
But this is a great way to look at it, it makes sense.
It's really detailed.
Yeah. Absolutely, when you look in the detail, it literally will tell you how many pencils, that's probably not that far in, but it will tell you, so if we're buying supplies, here's what we're looking to buy, so that it does make sense for you. And I think we'll continue to improve on that section as well. So when we started budgeting, what did we think about? We wanted to make sure that we're continuing to meet the needs of our students to increase rigor and higher outcomes. As we've talked about, we want to make sure we're doing the best things we can for our students. Teresa has jumped right in, they're working hard, we're working on supervision and evaluation, and we've got a lot of great things that are happening, moving us forward. We want to continue with those. We want to start looking at long-range planning and project development with our facilities. We've talked about this, we have a facilities committee. We want to start that process, and we need to start thinking about what that looks like in the budget. We want to continue to align technology resources with the needs of our students, our teachers, the community, and 21st learning outcomes. So it is no longer pencil and paper. It is almost expected by 2nd grade. Kids are fluent in computers. They're going to be taking the Smarter Balance assessment shortly, and it's expected that these kids know the technology. So it is no longer okay to say, well, we'll buy that later, we'll buy that later. We need to keep updating, we need to keep influencing and putting technology into our classrooms for teachers to use and our students to access. We'll continue to review staffing and enrollment numbers and make adjustments when appropriate. You'll see many of those changes we'll talk about. And of course, we need to stay within the tax cap. So that was kind of the overarching thing. At the end of the day, you will see this budget does not meet the tax cap. And we'll talk about why that is. So what I kind of outlined it into 3 specific areas: staffing, facilities, and technology we're going to talk about, because those are the big things. There's changes within the budget, but instead of doing, I wanted to give you a global look. And I just kind of put the question, how do we start to make the shift to planning with the tax cap limiting our fiscal growth? So when this budget was developed and the tax cap started, we didn't have any plans for our facilities. We didn't have plans for our fields. We didn't have plans for, so how do you add that in and start to make those plans when the tax cap is going to limit what we can do? And you're going to see that. So staffing wise, what did we do? So this year we had a guidance in English and a foreign language position at the high school that was budgeted last year. That those teachers either retired or resigned. We did not fill those positions. And we are doing fine here at the high school without them, so we are looking to reduce those positions in next year's budget. Our middle school guidance secretary has resigned and has gone to another town in another location within our community. But because of that, again, it's an opportunity to look to say, what can we do given the enrollment at the middle school? I had a conversation with Eric. We reduced that position to 50% time. Just based on enrollment numbers, based on what we would expect a secretary's time to be. So I'm recommending we continue with that as 50% next year. Danbury, where the guidance counselor left at the end of the year, again, we relooked at that. We moved the Bridgewater Hebron 5-day-a-week guidance counselor to 3 days a week. Moved her to 2 days at Danbury to fill that position. I don't know that I have positive or negative feedback around that, but she has worked out her schedule. One of the nice things is because she's full-time, she might stay, you know what I mean, there's some consistency. I think Danbury has consistently had turnover in that position because of the fact that it's 2 days a week, people come and go, they want full-time, and so they might take the job to get the experience and then apply elsewhere. So I'm hoping this will be some consistency. It also provides us some flexibility within the district, that if Danbury needs her there on a Tuesday and her scheduled day is Wednesday, we can make that adjustment internally with that. We are also looking to reduce one elementary teaching position due to enrollment at Bridgewater Hebron. Again, we have that 18 going into kindergarten, no need for 2 first-grade classes, so we're looking to reduce the budget by 1 elementary teaching position. We're also proposing to reduce the New Hampton community school kindergarten position to 50%. That consistently over the last couple of years has had enrollment of just a half-day program. And here's the conversation. Or should the board consider full-day kindergarten, which I have here. So what does full-day kindergarten look like if you went to that district-wide? So again, this is a district-wide slide. If the board chose to do individual schools, I suppose you could look at that. Danbury would be all set. We'd either keep a K1 class or change to another combination classroom. So we could potentially do it there. Bridgewater Hebron would be all set because again, we have half day. The issue there is we're at 18. What if that number increases? What if next year we have 22? Are we okay with a class size of 22? Or what, you know, if this went forward, what would that look like? If that class size increased, would we need to hire a second teacher for that? Bristol Elementary School would need a position and a half. We currently have a position and a half. We have a half-time position that's funded through Title I for an extended day for our lower kids who struggle. But that couldn't be used to support full-time day kindergarten. That would have to be allocated elsewhere because Title I's can't support, it would only support us, those lowest end kids for a full day. So we would need 3 teachers, basically at Bristol, 3 teachers plus furniture and curriculum needs for that extra classroom. So that would be the one place we would have extra classroom needs. And in New Hampton, we would not cut the half-time teacher and we would be all set. So I put that out to the board. It's not been a conversation that the board has brought up as interested in, but clearly you may be. So it is something that, again, it's a addition, subtraction when you see the bottom line. I think we're all gonna have to weigh these decisions pretty heavily as to where we go. I would absolutely 100% support it. I don't think 3 hours a day is enough time for our students to learn what they need to be learning, to get it in. And so I would, if it could happen, I would love to see it happen.
Can I interrupt for 1 second, Susan? Just, you had said earlier, this is what you're referring to, that this information is in this presentation, but
Right.
this is not.
This is not in your budget, no. But while we were talking, so the issue comes up when we start to reduce a kindergarten position, do you think about this now instead of reducing that position? Because I think once you reduce a position, it's always harder to get it back. So is this the time to have that conversation? So additional staffing changes. So at the middle school, there was a position called a permanent sub-office assistant. We have changed that position actually to a paraeducator's position. Interestingly, last year, I think, Anne had a great transition year. It was very quiet. We have had an abundance of students move into the district with severe needs, with out-of-district placements. I mean, it is a daily occurrence. I think Anne is tired of coming in my office and saying, oh my God, this kid. I mean, we've had, I think, like 8 kids move into the middle school with 1-to-1 aides. And we have managed, you will see at our next meeting, and we have a proposal for another aide because we are moving and shaking as much as we can. For example, like this, changing that position into a paraeducator's position. We are doing that as often as we can to be conservative, but at some point there is just no more bodies for some of these. These are some pretty significant kids, you know. We had one first day of school, you know, threw a bag through the front door and broke it, you know, so they're, you know, some of them are coming to us with pretty high needs. And I'm recommending that we keep one elementary teaching position in the budget, because we do have some of those class sizes that are up there. If you have a couple of students move in, it would give us some flexibility within the budget, just like we're doing now with the kindergarten position. That's the position that we would keep in the budget, just so that we had it, should a class size go up.
This could also be used for that Bristol kindergarten.
It could be, yes, yeah. But my biggest concern would be just what happens if we have a couple of class sizes that are at that, you know, 22, you know, what happens if 3 kids move in? That's the downside, you can't predict that. So I am recommending that piece of it. So some new requests that came in. So Anne is requesting we add an additional preschool teacher and 2 assistants to create a new preschool program. Right now, our preschool program is 100% special education students, which by law is not the least restrictive environment. So if a parent wanted, they could demand an actually least restrictive environment for students if they're not in a 50-50 classroom, meaning 50% special ed, 50% regular ed. Their least restrictive environment is home, which would mean we could potentially have students that we would have to send our staff to the house to provide those services, which would come at a far greater cost than this. So we are proposing creating another preschool program. Our numbers are topping out anyway. And that would be housed at Bristol Elementary School to provide kind of, so right now, everybody in preschool gets shipped from wherever to Bridgewater Hebron. This would provide a second program. We would be able to bring in 50% typical students, which we haven't talked about, but we could potentially get some revenue from that by paying tuition. Typically, it's a low tuition rate. I think in my last district, we charged $100 a week. $100 a month, sorry. $100 a month, it was like $1,000 a year for that. And basically that covered the supplies and things like that that the students use. But it's another venue for your community to have an opportunity for preschool if you can't afford it. But it's also a great way for our special ed students to have role models, and that's really the goal of a 50-50 program, is that they're not just in there with other autistic students, they actually have peer role models that are typical that they can role model and emulate from.
Stacy? And just to be clear, the kindergarten teachers and the preschool are not included in this budget that you've given us?
This preschool teacher is included. The additional kindergarten teachers are not. That was kind of a, think about this slide.
Okay.
Those are not included.
So is there anything else in here that's not in here?
No.
Okay.
I think the rest is, just that one slide of, before you cut that halftime kindergarten to halftime, why don't we think about this as?
Just want to be clear in this.
Absolutely. Yep, everything else is in there. So that is the preschool position. So New Hampton is requesting an increase. They currently have a 4.5-hour day para position. They're requesting that be increased to a full-time position, again, to meet the needs of student enrollment and the needs, more so the needs of the students who have moved into the community. Danbury is asking for one additional support person based on enrollment and multi-grade classes again. Staffing in Danbury is very tight, given the numbers we have had, the number of students that have moved in, and I think Ann has done a great job supporting and moving and figuring out and changing and adjusting. But again, I think we're just at that breaking point of we just don't have any more bodies. The high school is requesting our ELO coordinator, who is currently a 70% position. If you recall, at last board meeting, you increased that by 3 hours a week to 0.8 to go, that's through a grant though. This will allow her kind of basically to continue the ELO position, but also take over senior projects fully next year. And the family and consumer science position is currently 75%. We have an outstanding teacher in that, and the enrollment is up for those courses, and we actually had to not fill students' requests to take those classes because the teachers isn't just here enough. So this would allow her to teach a full course load, and I can guarantee you they will be thrilled. And actually the information on enrollment is in that rationale that Mike did. So it was pretty thorough on what the enrollment numbers look like and how many sections we couldn't fill this year because of just being 75% time.
That didn't take long. This was her first year, right?
This is her second year, yeah. And she does a really nice job with the students. So salary, as a reminder, teacher salary increases will come in your warrant article. So those are not. So teacher A is budgeted at the same year as next year because that will come when that warrant article is approved. That money will then transfer into the budget to fulfill those. As we started last year, we went through and looked at all of the support staff. And so it's about $140,000. That is in your budget. That is in there plus the FICA retirement to fix everybody. So remember last year we didn't move everybody into the right category, but we moved everybody halfway to the right step minus the odd number. So this is the calculation we've done based on current staffing, bringing them to the right step, to the right group.
When we looked at this before, we had a spreadsheet that showed
everybody. I can get you that. I've done it all. Yeah.
So for our next meeting.
Yep, I can get you that. And then for administrators and specialists, which are actually listed in there, so there's 13 administrators in the district and probably 15 or 20 specialists. That's all the SAU staff and like our speech pathologists, our school psychologists, our vision specialists. I say an approximate 2%. It was about 2%. I base that on some people might get more, some people would get less. That's based really on job performance. And how I based on evaluations where they should be for increases, but it was an average of about 2%. And again, that was $49,000 plus the FICA retirement. So for facilities, one of the things we really, Mike and I have been working with Alan for tonight. But we've been really working on, right now, how we do facilities is, so he waits till the end of the year and then, well, what's left in my account? And then we figure out what we're going to do. So we're really trying to shift that conversation to, we need to start putting plans in place for these things. So what we have budgeted for, to start that plan is looking at routine inside painting of our schools. So one of the downsides of us is, again, each school is small, so we don't have the staff to paint, so some of this is contracted out to have somebody come in and paint. The plan here, so there's about $25,000 budgeted for painting, and you will see those lines right in the budget, identified as painting. That would be to cover every one of our schools to paint the hallways and the doorways within every school. So that would start us on a plan of painting. It has been about 10 years since we've painted any building. Right now, our teachers come in and they paint. When we moved in the SAU office, I think we all kind of painted our own offices. Teachers buy their own paint their classrooms. It's very rare in the industry you would ask somebody to come in and paint their office and buy their own paint, usually. So this would help us start to move forward in a plan there. We did budget about $2,000 to repair the benches outside of the high school. That has been one of my little pet peeves this year, the benches that are sinking in. So Alan was looking at that. The downside of those right now is that they sit on sand. And so picking them up and straightening them out isn't going to do anything. They're going to continue to sink. So the $2,000 price tag would put a slab underneath them so that they don't sink. So it was a little more than we were anticipating. Middle and high school need to have their gym floors redone. Again, we don't have a consistent cycle to do those. Those should be done every 3 to 5 years. You need to sand them down, you need to repaint them, you need to resurface them to keep them
We
healthy.
just built a new gym floor recently.
Yeah, it was actually several years ago. So the middle school, I believe, got a free gym floor because they were supposed to do the high school and did the wrong school. Is what my understanding from looking back at historical things, yeah. So, but every 3 to 5 years, you should sand your floors down and refinish them.
It's not putting down a new floor.
It's not putting a new floor down.
Resurfacing it.
It's
No,
redoing.
that's why I'm wondering, I don't remember when that was.
Yeah, I want to say it was 4 or 5 years ago.
It's more than 5 years ago.
We contracted and put a new floor in, and they did it wrong, and they had to redo it for free, and it was the high school. That's my understanding, but
Am I
anyway.
getting to do it?
6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Yeah.
First job.
Oh, yeah, it was the same time I had my it was the same year. Yeah, so that was 6 years ago, so again, it's not redoing the floor, it's just refinishing it.
At the middle school, the auditorium area needs to be resurfaced as well.
I think that's
We don't have it on
The stage, you mean?
Oh, the
the
stage.
stage.
Yeah. One step at a time, man.
We certainly could add that.
You know, and honestly, we picked and choose kind of what, like, the biggest bang for buck, like, what are things that,
That isn't that many more square
yeah,
feet.
and certainly you could look at that.
Go with the new curtains, right?
Yeah, new curtains are looking good. Let's see, also looking at developing a maintenance plan, we budgeted $10,000 for our fields. This is something that, so one of the things we have to start thinking about as our schools are, they're an investment of our community. And our fields have had nothing done to them. I mean, we do nothing to them. We don't fertilize them, we don't seed them, we don't water them, we don't aerate them. We don't look for grubs, we don't fix them. So as, I think you don't mind, I've had my share of conversations with our athletic director around this. So for example, like our field hockey field, like it hasn't been ever straight, like flattened, so there's bumps and dents just where grubs get in. And so we need to start coming up with a plan for how to maintain our fields. Again, it's an investment. We spent a lot of money putting these fields in. To not have any plan for them is kind of silly at some level because I mean, how do you have to maintain things? Otherwise, we get like we have now, which is our fields are a lot of weeds. They look nice, but when you're playing on them, they're not grass. So we did budget some money there.
Have you notably excluded the football field from this?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, because they're part, they own that, yeah. And the middle school, we need to replace the roof, improve the drainage, and replace the fire panel. So the fire panel currently is outdated and needs to be upgraded. And we need to replace the roof, it is leaking. And Alan would like to improve the drainage when we replace it as a flat roof. It doesn't have a lot of drainage, so he would like to increase the drainage. And we are currently having leaks that they can't fix at this point. So it is something that really needs to get done. So again, thinking of facilities, that's like a small dent in the pile. For those on the facilities committee, you've seen the list. This will start us getting somewhere. So technology. So again, thinking about, so we have a tech plan that outlines specific things. These are things that fell kind of above and beyond what is in the tech plan. So we are looking, and I've had some conversations with Josh around this, around buying additional Chromebook carts for the Smarter Balance, because the Smarter Balance assessment is here. It will be happening this spring. It's all technology driven. How can we manage it without taking all of the technology of a building out of the hands of students for a month while they're doing the assessment? Because basically that is what will happen. So we're proposing some additional Chromebook carts for the assessment for use. So we're trying to figure out where to go. I'm not thinking Chromebooks are the best resource for the assessment piece of it. Because they're the smaller screens, we think an actual screen is better. But we wanted to budget something in there, whether we went with laptops or screens or desktops like we have here. We have to have that conversation still, but we wanted to budget something to be able to look at those needs and not take technology away for the month period of time while we were doing the assessments.
How many in the cart?
I believe there's 20. I think they come 20 or 25.
I think we're looking at a little bit larger cuts because,
Okay.
yeah, 25 to 30.
So we have a current, in our technology plan, we have a current plan to try to keep technology at 5 years, not going beyond 5 years. And so based on Josh's assessment of what we have in technology, he has added $46,000 to replace technology that's above and beyond the plan that is 5 years or older. Does that make sense? So this is kind of above and beyond what was in the plan. We also budgeted $14,000 for office software for our staff. I will tell you the one thing that when I started here, that was the number one complaint I heard from staff was we don't have Office. We have to use the freeware. It doesn't translate well. We have to, if they send me documents, I'm like, I can't open it. So this will allow the teachers, the faculty to have access to Word, to basically Office, Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. Like I said, if one of the things I'm pointing out is, if we want to mirror the world, so we got away from the Macs, the world uses Microsoft Office. And so if we want our kids to have that real world experience of going into a company, they're using Office. And so what does that look like? So again, that was an addition.
It would put us all on the same version as
Yes.
well. Right now, we have very odd versions throughout the whole district. They're using compatibility packs and all sorts of things to try to share.
We'll get together.
A few of us that have it.
So the next one is looking at a new phone system. So again, these are all technology related things that we've been working on. Josh and Mike have been working diligently with Comcast, with the different vendors, to look at what a new phone system would look like. Our phone system right now is ancient. I'm surprised it barely works. It has no features, basically. If it breaks, we have no replacement for it. We have no phones in our classroom. So what this will do, will get us mostly VoIP systems. It will allow us to 4-digit dial across the district. But it will also...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. It will also put a phone in every classroom in our district. One of the things we have found through all of our safety assessments and through those conversations with police and fire and all of our meetings we have is that because we lack cell phone use in our district, is that if you're at Bristol Elementary School and you're on the second floor and there's a crisis and you can't use your cell phone, there is no phone for you to call anybody. And so this will put a phone in every classroom so that emergency calls can be made. It does not come cheap. We estimate about $191,000. That would replace every phone and replace every phone and add phones into every single classroom in the district.
But we do have classrooms with phones, right?
Some.
This would bring Cat 6 cabling to each room
Like
as
the high school
well.
has none.
So they'd have plug-in high-speed internet too with
Middle
the
school has
phone.
none. Bristol Elementary School has none.
There are no phones in.
Does anybody have phones in their classrooms?
We have phones, but a teacher can't, they can call like the office to have me come up to visit, but they can't go on the intercom and say, we're in lockdown. They can't have that safety communication throughout our entire building. So again, in New Hampton, we have great windows, but my teachers can't put us in lockdown. So they have to call down, then Katie or I are the only two phones that really can put us in lockdown.
Yes.
Same thing in Danbury. So it's some of those bigger safety concerns right now.
Yeah, and like at Bristol Elementary School, when we did the intruder drill with the police department, we had teachers on the second floor who were on their cell phone, who had the intruder was outside their door, but they couldn't call the emergency number because obviously it was off. But they couldn't call that number because they couldn't get out. There was no cell phone service, and so they sat in a classroom with the intruder right outside, but couldn't convey anything to 911 because they had no ability to get cell phone reception. So a lot of safety things, a lot of access, a lot of needs.
So I have a question about that, Bristol particularly, without cell phone service there. Can somebody just cut the cord for this phone system once it's installed? No? Okay, I just want to make sure.
I mean, unless they're going underground in the wires, I mean, this would all be a wired system.
It's cable.
It's all
I mean,
cables.
someone would have to,